Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's me, IJ, your fashion teacher, and this is IJ Designs. On today's tutorial, we are going to learn how to draft a princess dart. The dart that comes from the bust to the waist. A princess bustier dart. We are going to learn how to draft it today. You can use it to make a peplum blouse. You can use it to make the Igbo blouse, that is the blouse to tie wrapper, the blouse to wear ordinary skirts. You can use this draft we are going to do today to do a lot of things, as long as you understand what we are doing. For those of us from Nigeria, the Igbo side, you can use it to tie your wrapper, the two wrappers. So without wasting much time, I would like to say a very big thank you to all my subscribers. You guys are the best, and I will continue to share my knowledge with you. So now, let's get drafting. But before then, have you subscribed to my channel? If you have not, just pause this video. Just subscribe, like and share my videos. Also comment and put on the notification bell that whenever I upload a new video, you watching me, will be the first to be notified. I love you guys, and we will continue to be learning. So now I would like to start. Now, as you can see, my papers are ready. My drafting papers are ready. Now we are going to start inserting our measurements. We will start with the vertical. This draft I'm making, I'm going to use my measurement to make it. So now my shoulder is 15 divided. Always, you remember, you always fold your material in two, or your drafting paper in two. So now, first of all, let us draft the starting line. That is where we will start drafting our paper. That's the drafting, that is the starting point. So from here, I'll measure my shoulder. My shoulder is 7.5 plus half inch sewing allowance, that is 8. And then I'll come down by 7.5 here. I'll also measure 8.5 so that it can be on a straight line. I'll measure 8. Here is 8. So I will now draw it into a straight line. This is the shoulder area. Also, I'll measure 7.5 here so that we'll now get a straight line. So now, my shoulder to my bust point is 10 inches. I'm going to mark 10 inches. This is my 10 inches. Shoulder to my bust point. Shoulder to my under bust is 14. Shoulder to my waist is 16.5. Sometimes I can use 16, but today I'm using 16.5. It depends on what I'm making. To my hip, this draft is going to be for a top, to make an Igbo blouse, or to make a blouse that you can use to wear your skirts. Then if you want to use it to make a peplum blouse, you have to just stop on your waist measurement and add half inch allowance to join it to the peplum. But I am making this for a blouse to tie wrapper known as the Igbo blouse. So now my hip, shoulder to my hip is 22. Shoulder to the length of the blouse I'm making is 25. Then plus 1 seam allowance, that is 26. So now I'm also going to insert it this area and make a straight line. Now I have made it into a straight line. As you can see, I've made it into a straight line. That is the length of the blouse. This is the length of the blouse. Here is the length of the blouse. Now let's insert our horizontal measurement. We start from the chest side, the upper part of it, the opening of the neck I'm using. And what I would like to use 3 inches. Here 3 inches. And from here, the shoulder line, I'll come down by 1 inch. That is the slope of our shoulder. Remember, our shoulder is not straight, it curves. So that is the slope. Then from these 3 inches, I'll connect it to the shoulder line. See it? From these 3 inches, if you want to add more, opening, for example, you want to use 4 inches, then you will now come down from here, 4. You will not take 1 inch here if you want to use 4 inches to it. So here, I'm left with 6.5. From that 1 inch, I came down from the shoulder line. The remaining is 6.5 inch. So divide 6.5 inch by 2. I'm going to have 3.25. That is here. From this 3.25, I will come in by 3/4 inch or ½ inch. I'll come in by 3/4 inch. So from there, I'll connect it. I will make my front armhole. From the 3/4 inch that we came in, I'll connect it to the chest line. That is my armhole. That is the front armhole. Can you see it? That is the front armhole. And here is the back armhole. If you are making it together, that is the back armhole. But later we are going to also draft the back part of it. So now this is the chest line. That is where we are going to insert our bust measurement. But before then, let us determine our darts. We are going to determine our darts. So now you start from your waist to determine your darts. Now I'm going to use my nipple to nipple measurement. What is my nipple to nipple measurement? My nipple to nipple measurement is 3.5 plus ½ inch sewing allowance. I assume that this thing I'm drafting is my material. So on my material, I don't need to add any other allowance. I just cut it out when I place it. So I'm doing everything on this drafting so that when I place it on my material, I just cut it out. So now my nipple to nipple measurement is 3.5. I'll add ½ inch for sewing allowance. That is 4. So I will now bring out 4 inches here. This is my waist, 4 inches. Then on my bust line, I also draft 4 inches or 4 inches altogether. And also at the length of my cloth, I'll also measure 4 inches. At the length, I measure also 4 inches. Then now I'll give it a straight line. Now, let's come back to the armhole area. So now, the armhole, my bust point is, the measurement of my bust is 9.5. I now measure 9.5 here because I want to determine the depth of the armhole. So now I measure 9.5. This is my 9.5. So from this place, I will now check what I have on this area. Can you see it? The line that we draw on the armhole, the front armhole. We check what I have here. I have 8 inches. That is what I have. These 8 inches, I'm going to divide it into 2. It's going to give me 4 inches. Then this is the 4 inches. Then I come down by 1 inch. From this 1 inch I came down, I'll connect it to the bust point here with my straight ruler. Now, from this bust point, I'm going to go up by 1 inch. 1 inch here. Then I'm going to come down also by 1 inch. So now, on the under bust, on the under bust, I'm going to also go in by 1/1/4. 1/1/4 and also 1/1/4. I am using 1/1/4 as my dart. And also at the down of my material, I'm going to go in by 1/1/4. So altogether, the dart I am making use of is 2.5 inches. That is what is going to go out from my dart. And remember, this dart that I'm going to take away, I'm going to replace it. After inserting my measurement, I'm going to put it back. Because if you don't put it back, you are going to miss a lot. Your material, your style will not be what you want. You are going to be short of inches. So this 2.5, I'm going to put it back after my measurements. So now, from this bust point that I came down 1 inch, from this bust point that I came down 1 inch, I'm going to connect it to the under bust. I'm going to connect it to the under bust. And also connect to this side. Then from this under bust that I connect, this is 1/1/4 and here is 1/1/4. So from here, I would connect it to 1/1/4 that I also took from the down the length of the material we are making. That is the length of our draft. You see it? So from this line that I joined on the armhole, I'm going to take away some inches as also the dart. So on each of it, I'm going to take away 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch this side, 1/2 inch this side. Then I will now connect it to the 1.1 inch that we went up. Remember, this 1 inch that we went up, we are going to extend our dart so that we are going to cover it up. Otherwise, it's going to be short here. So now I'm going to take 1 inch up from here. So this is going to be our new armhole. 1 inch here. But for beginners, I would like you to add extra 1/2 inch if you are going to pad the bust, because sometimes when you pad the bust, it shorts the material. So to be on the safe side, you can make it 1.5 inch. But if you are okay that you can use 1 inch, then you add 1 inch. But now I'm going to make use of 1 inch. So that's the 1 inch here. And here we'll now draft our new armhole. From this 1 inch now, we'll curve the new armhole here. So now let us insert our horizontal measurements. Remember, I came up 1 inch from the bust point and I came down also 1 inch from the bust point to make the area of the bust, to ease it, to have an ease on the area of the bust. So you can also use your curve to curve it well so that it's not pointed. Yeah, curve it good. So now, do you see how it protrudes already? So now let's insert our measurements. My bust is 38. 38 divided by 4 is going to give me 9.5. And here is my 9.5. Here is my 9.5. Remember, something is going out here. This dart is going out. So you measure what is going out here. Here I have 1/4 that is going away from here. So I'm going to place the 1/4 here. I add back the 1/4. Remember, you have to join the two together. After cutting it, you need 1 inch and extra 1 inch seam allowance. That is 2 inches. Then if you want to turn it to the lining, if you don't have a zigzag machine, you will now add extra 1/2 inch to turn the material to the lining. So here is our measurement. So what I added extra 1/4 plus 2 inches sewing allowance, and to sew it together here, and also 1/2 inch to turn it to our lining. So now my waist is 32. 32 divided by 4 is 8. So I'm going to place 8 here on my waist. I don't have to place anything on my underbust. When I curve it, the underbust is going to come in. But if you're somebody that like to use your underbust, just take your tape, measure whatever you have on your underbust, and you insert it here. And also remember to insert the dart you are taking away. So now the waist, my waist is 8. This is the 8 inches of my waist. Remember, this dart is going out, and this dart is 2.5 inches. So I'm going to place the 2.5 inches here. And remember, extra 2.5 inches to sew this together. 1 inch seam allowance, 1 inch, and also the 1/2 inch to turn it to the lining, 2.5 inches. So all together on the waist allowance you are going to add is 5 inches. So you come down to the hip. My hip is 41. 41 divided by 4 is 10.25. So I'll make it 10.5. Then this is my 10.5 plus extra 5 inches. You remember the one taken out from the dart and the 2.5 inch that you added at the waist. So extra 5 inches will be added here at the hip. So here at the hip, you just measure what you have at the hip. I have here 15.5 at the hip. Then I'm going to bring it down to the length of my material. You bring it down to the length of your material and you are good to go. So now we are going to connect. Remember, on the upper side to add your 1/2 seam allowance for joining the shoulder together. Don't forget that. So now the neckline. What is the neck, the style of the neck you want? Do you want a round neck? Do you want a V-neck? Do you want any neck of your choice? But I'm going to go with a round neck. So the depth of the neck I'm working with is 6 inches here. Then if you want to increase the width, then you have to go in. So let me make it 3.5. Let me come in here by 1/2. Then I'll now mark here also 3.5. Then I'll connect it together. Then I'll use my cuff. That's my neckline. Do you see it? That's my neckline. So now we have to connect our allowances together. From the waist, from the bust, I connect to the waist. And you turn your cuff like this for the hip. You curve it to the hip. Then you bring it down to the length of your material. Do you see it? Do you see it? Do you see our drafts? So now we have connected it and it's time to cut it out. Our princess that bustier have been cut out. Do you see how it looks? Do you see it? This is the princess that you can allow us. So now we have finished cutting the front panel. We are going to cut the back panel. Now guys, we have finished drafting the front panel. Now is to draft the back panel of a princess that. Now I'm going to use this to show two types of basic bodies we are going to achieve on this draft. You can use it to draft a normal basic bodies, or you can use it to draft a princess that bodies. So now let's start. So as you can see, I have inserted some lines on my paper from here to here. Let me take my tape. This is the starting line. This line is the starting line. So from this place to here, 7.5 is my chest line, where I will now determine the armhole at the back part. Then from here to here is 16.5. From shoulder to here is 16.5 my waist. From shoulder to 22 is my hip, and from shoulder to 26 is the length plus allowance of the draft we are making. And don't forget to start with your first 1 inch, that is the zip allowance at the back. Remember, I said I'm drafting this as if it is my fabric, so that when cutting it, I just place it and I cut. I don't need to add any allowance on it. I don't need to add any allowance on it, but just to cut it out on my material. So that is how I'm drafting it. So now the neck depth line I'm using at the back is 2. That is this line, 2 inches. And remember, at the front we use 3.5, and this is the 3.5 here. And also remember to this shoulder slope. First we determine 3 inches as the depth, and now we come down by 1 inch from the shoulder line as 1 inch here. This is the 1 inch to determine our shoulder slope. From these 3 inches here, we connected to the shoulder slope of 1 inch here. And then we now determine how many inches is left for us at the armhole, which is 6.5. Divide 6.5 by 2, you have 3.25, and this is the 3.25 here. I mark 3.25, and from there I determine the armhole. From this 3.25, I determine the armhole of the back panel. So now, remember our nipple to nipple measurement. Our nipple to nipple measurement. So the nipple to nipple measurement is 4. So after the zip line, you start measuring your 4 inches, which is this. So and at the back, we only need the chest line, the waist line, the hip line, and the length of the cloth you are making. You don't need your bust point at the back. It's not needed. So from this chest line, I came down by 1 inch. Remember, I drew 4 inches is the nipple to nipple. You still need your nipple to nipple measurement at the back. So insert your nipple to nipple measurement from the chest line. Insert 4 inches, this chest line. Insert 4 inches, the waist, the hip, and also the length of the cloth and length of the draft, and you draw a straight line, which is this straight line. I'm going to use 2 different markers to explain what I'm doing. So now, I drew a straight line from the chest to the length of the material. I drew a straight line from the chest here to the length of the material. I drew a straight line. So now that I need at the back, I don't need much. That is only but ½ inch. So from this 4 inch here, that is the nipple to nipple measurement, on both sides of the 4 inch, I'm taking ½ inch. Can you see it? I'm taking ½ inch. So now I'm taking ½ inch. Then I'll now come down to the hip. From the hip line, I'll go up by 2 inches. I'll go up by 2 inches, and from these 2 inches I connect to the 1/2 inch at the waist. Do you see it? That's the line that you now saw. Then from the chest I came down by 1 inch. From the chest line I came down by 1 inch, and from there I connect to the 1/2 inch of the waist. Can you see it? I connect to the 1/2 inch of the waist. Now the measurements of here is complete. Now that is the vertical. That's the vertical now. Then the horizontal, I said I'm going to use 2 markers to differentiate what I'm doing. Now what I'm doing is a basic bodice. If you want to draft it as a basic bodice and not as a princess dart, that is the measurement I am making now, as a basic bodice and not as a princess dart. That's the measurement I'm making now. So now the measurements, the horizontal measurement, my bust measurement is 38. 38 divided by 4 is going to give us 9.5. Then I'll measure my 9.5 here. Here is my 9.5. Remember, we are not cutting here open. We are not cutting here open. So I'll add only but 1 inch seam allowance here. And also to turn it to the lining to make it neat. If you don't have a zigzag machine, you add 1.5. So now at the waist is 8 inches. That is 32 divided by 4, 8. That is the 8 inches here. Remember this, that we are not taking it, we are not going to cut it open, but we are going to close it up. So we are going to replace it here. So the dart, I put it back here 1 inch plus 1.5 inch, sewing and making it to be neat, to join it to the lining. That is 1.5. So 2.5 inches extra I added at the back. So at the hip, my hip is 10.5. And here I'm not cutting anything open, so I don't need to have 1/2 inch to sew it. Then I'll add also 1.5 inch allowance. And this, what I have here, I'm going to bring it down to the length of my drafting. Can you see it? So now let's connect. From the armhole, I connect to the waist. Then I turn my hip cuff. I connect to the hip, and from the hip I get down to the length of my blouse. Do you see it? Here, this line from here, the first line you see here, the armhole. This armhole line you saw here, that is the back armhole. If you are not making it as a princess dart, so the measurement and the drafting that you are seeing here now is making it as a normal blouse, as a bodice, a normal bodice. Now, if you want to make it as a princess dart, we are going to determine that with our red beak. This is the red beak now. Remember, this black beak you are seeing is a bodice, normal bodice to make a blouse. Then to make it as a princess dart, now we need to add some allowances because we are going to cut it open. That is why it needs some allowances. So now, since here is where we came down 1 inch from the chest line, we came down to 1 inch. You are going to determine the armhole. Remember the armhole, this is the half of the armhole here. From the half of the armhole here, this is the half of the armhole. From there, you connect it, the half of that armhole, you connect it to this point of the chest. Just connect it. I'm going to use the red to connect it. That is if you are making it as a princess dart. Now, if you're making it as a princess dart, you are going to connect from this place. You can use your free hand. You connect it here. Do you see it? You connect it with this red. I'm using the red to connect it so that you see the difference. That is when you're making it as a princess dart. So now I connect it to the armhole. Because I'm going to cut it open, I added half-inch allowance. Because when you cut it open, you need half-inch to sew it so that it doesn't get short. So this is the half-inch here. And from here, I will determine my new armhole, because it's going to be cut open. So from here, I determine the new armhole. This is making it as a princess dart. So this is the new armhole now. From here is the new armhole. Well, as making it as bodice is the black line. As making it as a princess dart is the red line. So now, since I'm making it as a princess dart, this half-inch at the waist, I'm going to take it down to the length of the cloth. So I'm going to take it down to the length of the draft. So on both sides of this, the end of the draft, I'm going to mark half-inch. Of this both sides, I'm going to mark half-inch. Then I'm going to connect it from the waist to here, which I have done with the red beak. I've connected it from the waist to the end of the draft. If you are making it as a princess dart, if you are making it as a normal bodice, you use the black line. So now let's insert our measurements. Remember, all the measurement remains the same, but because we are going to cut here open, we need to place it back. We are cutting it open, so we need half-inch here to sew it together. So we are going to add extra 1 inch here. That is the cutting it open. Because we are cutting, this is going to go out. And you need half-inch to sew it. Remember, on the other one, on the bodies, this doesn't have to go out. But on the princess dart, here has to go open. So we are going to add this one to here. 1 inch to here. That's the 1 inch we are going to add because we are cutting it open. The same thing on the hip. We are going to add 1 inch. The same thing on the length of the drafting. We are going to add extra 1 inch. Coming to the armhole, because we are going to add, also cut it open, we are going to add extra 1 inch to the armhole. Do you see it? So now we are going to connect it. So now this red line is if you are making it as a princess dart. The red line. Remember, you are cutting this open. So this dart is going to go off. So you are going to replace it here, which is this. Remember, you need half-inch to sew it also together. You need half-inch to sew it together, which we have already added here. We have already added it here to sew it together. The half-inch to sew it together, we have already added it here. So, if you don't understand it, to be on a safe side, just add extra 1 inch. After determining your measurement at the end of it, you trim off the allowances that you don't need. But to be on a safe side, add extra 1 inch. It's better to have excess than to have less. Excess, you trim it off, but when you have less, it has already spoiled what you are doing. So do you see it now? So we added extra 2 inches because we are making it as a princess that the resting remains the same. So now we are going to cut it out. Now guys, I have cut it out. Can you see it? This is the side of the back and this is the center of the back. This is the zip line. Like I said, this extra 1 inch is for keeping it. If you need it, you add it. If you don't need it, after taking your measurement, then you trim it off. But this is just to be on a safe side for beginners. This is just to be on a safe side for beginners. Just keep it. After you take your measurement, when you're trying to put the front and back panels together, then you are going to trim it out if you don't need it. So now our back panel is ready. So the princess that we have made is ready. The back is ready. The front is ready. Let me put it together for us to see. This is the back. And now this is the front panel. Can you see how it is? Do you see it? The princess that bustier that we have just drafted is ready. You can use it to make your Igbo blouse. You can use it to make ordinary blouse. You can use it to make your peplum blouse. When making the peplum, as I said, stop at your waist measurement and add ½ inch seam allowance and you are good to go. So if this tutorial on how to draft a princess that's bustier to make a blouse, a peplum blouse, or a gown, or whatever you want to make has been helpful to you, give me a giant thumbs up, like, share, and comment on my videos. And don't forget to please subscribe on my channel. Put on the notification bell that whenever I upload, you watching me will be the first to be notified. I love you guys and I'll continue to share my view. And I'm wishing everyone a happy Christmas and a prosperous New Year. Love you guys.